Hi, okay, so what I'm going to show you guys here is how to work with the Keylight effect. Okay, and what we did is we shot some footage that is going to have the background replaced. And this is one of those tutorials, and this footage was shot on the JVC HM100. Okay, so there we are, and we've got our green screen background lit. So what we're going to do is look at removing that now. So I'm going to take that footage, drop it onto a new comp button to automatically generate a comp that matches that footage in terms of length and resolution. Now, as long as our subject has green around him, the rest of the background, so we've got other people hanging around and things like that, doesn't matter as long as our subject is entirely covered with green, and you can see he's not. Fortunately, the screen there you can see is, I can't really say, is a little too high, because if it comes down too low it'll will lose the top of his head. So the framing most likely could probably have been just tightened up a little bit, okay, just to sort of cut him off at the sort of top of the waist there, so we don't have any of that, like I said, white border or the backdrop. So we'll have to reposition them a little bit, unfortunately, to fix that. We'll have a look at that in a second. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pen tool. I'm going to create a quick mask around our subject. Okay, now what I would say is, obviously the reason we're doing this is to cut out the backdrop, and where there isn't green and things like that. But you'll notice I'm actually going a lot closer than that, because I am actually looking to lose even a lot of the green. Okay, and the other thing is I haven't gone in too close though either. At the same time, I haven't drawn around sort of his edge or anything like that. There's no point. If I was going to do that, then what's the need in shooting on a green screen? So generally we just want to try to create a shape that gives him enough room to move around in, but yeah, we don't want it to be too wide either. So I would say, even if you're shooting in a green screen studio where the entire background is green, use a mask to start off with. Okay, the main reason for that is you'll notice that the green on here isn't a totally even green color, and you can sort of see that here it's brighter than it is down here. In fact, it looks brighter here too. So you'll find it'll change slightly, and the more it changes, the more work you have to do to get a clean key. So even in a studio where the entire background is green, you'll find that it's unlikely it'll be the exact same sort of shade of green throughout, just because of the way the light falls on it. There'll be slight differences. So again, a mask helps create a very clean removal straight away. You can see everything outside of the mask is completely gone, so you've got a very good clean cutout straight away. So that's why we use a mask. It just means we've got less green to remove, and hopefully that means less work. So once I've drawn my mask, what I want to do is just play the footage just to double check that he doesn't step outside, and you can see he does. In fact, actually, while I'm doing that, I might as well just reposition these layers. So like I said, I've got to get rid of that border and a bit of the background that we've got in there. So this will be our new framing now because of that. And you can see, in fact, actually there's still a bit of white there as well. Right, okay, so that's how it's going to have to be, unfortunately. But you can see, like I said, when he moves, his hand goes out. So I've got to now go in and just adjust that point a little bit, okay? Because it's important that he doesn't move out. Again, you can see a little bit of white there. He doesn't sort of step out of the mask. If he does that, then obviously it'll just cut him off, and that's going to look silly. So there we go. Apart from that, he seems to be, yeah, in frame. Okay, while he's in frame, the mask isn't cutting him off, so that's great. So we've done that bit. So next thing we do now is we use a Keylight plugin. So I'm going to drop that on there. Okay, and here's our Keylight. We're going to look at a few of the settings on here. It's actually got a lot of options on here. We're going to look at a very small amount of those. First thing we're going to do is screen color. So I'm going to use the little eyedropper tool there and select the green that I want to remove. Okay, and you'll see that generally straight off it does a good job of removing all those green pixels. Hasn't removed them entirely. Some are partially gone, so we've got to clean that up a little bit now. Okay, and the way we do that, at the moment we're looking at our final result. What we can do is we can jump back to our source if we ever want to, just have a look at what the footage looked like originally. That helps sometimes if you're pulling a key and you go a little bit too far. It helps you to just sort of look at the original version. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the screen matte view, and what the screen matte does is gives me a black and white version of what we're looking at there, the white being the bits we want to keep, the black being the bits we want to lose. Okay, anything grey being semi-transparent. objects. Keep in mind that sometimes you can shoot semi-transparent objects on a green screen. Someone wearing a pair of glasses, for example, if you can see through the glasses and you can see a bit of the green behind it, that would most likely be semi-transparent. Even though we've got a mask, it kind of gives us a square frame on the screen map view, but you can see that we are getting little bits of light grey. We know there's no semi-transparent objects in this shot. It should really be just black and white. So we need to clean that up. So we're going to go into the screen matte settings here. And we've got clip black and clip white, and you've got 0 for black and 100 for white. Those are the values. So if something hits 100, it's a white. If it hits 0, it's black. So that means 50% would be a mid-grey, like 25% might be a dark grey. Okay, what we can do is we can change those threshold values. So I'm going to raise the clip black settings. So instead of 0 being black value, now I'll raise it to about 11 just to clean that up a bit. And you'll see all the dark greys have now disappeared. So that means anything with a value of 11, which would be a very dark grey, or below, just becomes a black now. I remember black represents something that is completely transparent. With the 100, actually, I can't really see any light grey, so I don't know if I need it. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Oops, maybe a little bit too much there. I was going to say, generally that looks okay. Obviously, you'll start to see a little bit of semi-transparency around the top of the head, but that's because, you know, we can see the green through the hair. So actually, no, I'll leave that. Go back to my final result. Now, one of the things we did have with the camera was this little edging I could see, and it's still there now. So I want to try to clean that up a little bit. Okay, what I can do is I've got screen shrink and grow. If I grow it, you'll see it pulls the edge out. See, that's not what I want to do. So I'll undo that. I want to go the other way, so I'm just going to go, like, say, to a -2. Let's see how that goes. Okay, just to pull that edge in perhaps a little bit. Okay. It's up to you. You've got to play around with it, zoom in, see which values is the works the best. Be aware that you don't want to go too far, otherwise you start to lose stuff. He'll start to lose his hair at the top, ears normally go, things like that, so you don't want to go too far. What can also happen is when you start to remove a bit of the edge, it can start to give it sort of more harsher finish, so they can be quite sort of, it has like a pixelated look sometimes, quite blocky, which isn't what the footage looks like. What I'd recommend is just apply very small amount of softness perhaps, and that just softens those edges up a little bit as well. Okay, actually let's try about there. Okay, and again, like I said, when you're doing this, that's why it's useful to jump back to the source, compare it against the source, just to see what's going on. In fact, if you look at the hair now, go back to the source, see, yeah, so it feels like we are losing a little bit there. Okay, there we go. Let's pull that back a bit. So, so you can work on cleaning it up a little bit. Welcome to have a look at some of the other options on here. I'd say that, okay, once you're sort of happy with what you've got, again, you've got to look at things like movement and stuff as well, because when things move, the key may look slightly different, because again, you'll get partial transparency in a sense, because again of motion blur and things like that. So there's a few things you may want to look at. In fact, a lot of times you'll find you'll need separate keys for other separate parts, so you might even do a different key just for the moving hand. But as a quick introduction, just having a look at Keylight, like I said, we found, you know, hopefully it's quite easy to sort of just be able to key out the background, but then also clean it up a little bit more as well. What we can then do is just take our background we've got here, which is sort of like a studio background, which unfortunately isn't the right size for this. So I'm going to press S for scale, and I'm just going to stretch that out. Now again, beware that we wouldn't normally do that. We want a background that fits. This is just an example. And there we go, we've got ourselves some footage, and we've got our subject sort of standing in front of a backdrop. Okay, and this is where it's really important to try to light the subject to match what's going on. Okay, because if they don't match the type of lighting in the background, then it doesn't really work. And I think with this example, the lights were quite harsh. I think we may have softened them up a bit, but you can see the shadows again are still quite strong in comparison to the background. But again, yeah, that's something that you'd work on when you're shooting. Okay, hopefully that's given you a good understanding at least of how to work with the Keylight plugin.